Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Chris McDaniel's America. Of course, I'm not Chris again. It's just me, Jack Fairchild's filling in for Chris again. He's off working. We hope to have him back real soon. But I'm not alone this time, and I have a couple of guests with me. I have my co-workers at the Laurel Leader Call in Josh Guru Nichols and Kevan Lindsey, and they're going to give you a different perspective because both of them have the unique distinction of being conservatives in the field of journalism, which, as you know, is extremely rare. Josh and I both host a podcast, a true crime podcast called Missing Link Jones County, which is a bi-weekly podcast. New episode will drop on Monday, on Thursday. We'll record it on Monday. And my friend Kevan Lindsey over here, he's about to launch his own podcast venture, which is going to be an interview-style show called Kicking It with Kev. Guys, thanks for joining the show today.
Thanks for having us, Jack. And just going a little bit further with Missing Link Jones County, we've done 5 episodes so far. One was a double episode involving 2 missing persons from Jones County. And then, unfortunately, the other 4 are 4 unsolved murders. You can catch them on your podcatcher of choice. Some really interesting facts. We work with a local Jones County Sheriff's Department investigator, Thad Wyndham. He presents all of his findings that he has for each case, and every one of them is very unique in its own right. And it's starting to catch some ears definitely in the community. We've gotten feedback from Thad that he's had a couple of leads in some of these cold cases. And as we like to say on the podcast, or as I close this out with, one piece of information could be that one link that's the missing link to help solve one of these cases.
Kevin, tell us a little bit about the podcast that you're about to launch.
Yeah, it's something that I've been wanting to do for a while now, and finally in a place where we can kind of do that as we're going through podcasts and more media with the newspaper. Mine's going to be a simple interview process, but hoping just to be a relaxed kind of interview and sit down and dive into people's lives, give them insight. It's going to be people from Jones County, around the state. Hopefully, as it grows, it gets a little bit bigger, and we invite other people on, but just really want to dive into their story. I love storytelling and things like that, and there's no better way than for someone to sit down and have them tell their story, and not just the rainbows of everything, the struggles and stuff like that. So that's what we're hoping to do there.
Well, part of the reason I asked y'all to come on today is because, again, we're in an interesting time in our world. It's a time where the media is not trusted, and not trusted for good reason. And even though those of us are a part of the media, we understand why there's a distrust, and it's because there's such a bias, and that bias is definitely towards the left. And Kevin, I'm going to start with you on the next question, because you're a conservative, and yet you're in media. You've been in journalism longer than me, even though I'm older, because I just got back into it after being away for 20 years. Tell me, again, have you found it difficult being a conservative in such a liberal-dominated field?
Well, I have an interesting story of how I got into journalism as a whole. I started just photography and landscape photography, helping out a friend of mine who was in sports journalism. And I started saying yes to freelancing gigs and things like that, and really dove into sports. Always been around this area in the Pine Belt. And when COVID hit, I started covering more news more news stories and things like that. Had my first experience with court cases and other things like that. And you just start saying yes more than you say no, and it leads you into more news than sports. And then I had an opportunity to take on a general manager role, and last year left that role and moved to Pike County, particularly Macomb. And you don't realize how different it is when you move a couple hours away. Jones County, we have a Democratic mayor, but to be perfectly honest with you, he does hold several conservative values.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting with Jones County. However, in Macomb, it was very much a Democratic led city, and a lot of Democratic values come along with that. And I think the first time I really knew that I was in a different world was I went to my first city council meeting, and they had prayer before the council meeting, which is not uncommon, but the mayor referred to God as a they them, and I was like, oh
wow,
this is different.
They seriously referred to God as they them.
Yeah, they them. It was I believe you had was it a senator or someone who had the famous prayer referred to God as a they or them or something like that. Reminded me of that. It was a news story a couple of years ago. But yeah, it was definitely different. A lot of values were different. And the more I stayed there, I wasn't there very long. Was able to come back to God's country in Jones County.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, definitely a different system. And I tell people now who are critical of this area and things like that, go stay in a different city that is Democratic led. You will be thankful for this area.
Absolutely. Well, Josh, first off, before we get into your story, your nickname's Guru. Explain to me how you got the nickname Guru.
Well, see, I made a trek overseas, and I met with I'm full of crap. I made it up. I used to, in the late 90s, I started writing a college football weekly, basically a newsletter. I had some subscribers, not very many, basically enough to pay for my postage cost. But I wanted to come up with a catchy nickname, and I did a Google search and came across Guru, and I loved it and went with Josh. Started out as the Guru, then got shortened to Josh Guru, and now for the most part it's no Josh, it's just Guru Nichols. And
your byline in the paper is Guru Nichols.
Correct. And it was self-given, but it's funny because I was here at the Leader Call the first time from started out as a stringer in 2010, came on full-time 2011, and was here until football started in the fall of 2017. And in the 7 years that I was gone, I still had people, that's all they called me. Mm-hmm. And they still call me that to this day. I mean, we were all together at a local club meeting yesterday, and one of the members in there referred to me as, hey, there's Guru. So it's something that caught on, and, I enjoy it. It makes it fun. But kind of going back to what Kevin was talking about, my background when I was here before was 95% sports. I did some help out with some special sections and doing some feature stories that were not sports related. And coming back has been an eye opener. But in those 7 years that I was gone, I can kind of expound further on what he was saying just about Macomb itself, because I worked in the field that I was working in before I came back to the Leader Call. I worked from anywhere from the Gulf Coast all the way up to the Tennessee state line and into parts of Louisiana, Alabama. But I always felt the further north that I got away from Jones, Jasper, Smith County, especially crossing I-20 and going further north, I consider that Yankeeville, Mississippi, because it's like he talked about Macomb. Once you get up and around Tupelo, Oxford, South Haven, right outside of Memphis, all those areas it's like you're not even in the same state at times, just because of how different the people are up there. And then coming back to the present day, I've been back for almost 6 months now, and it's been an eye opener, because when all you have to do is worry about sports, and then I'm on the job for a month and I go cover my first arson case with a house that's in Ellisville fully engulfed in flames when I get there. And then not even 3 weeks later, I'm covering my first murder case. And it's kind of a whirlwind. And, between the three of us, we try to split up everything, news, sports, whatever's going on in our local community as evenly as we can. And for all three of us, I mean, sports was our main background, and getting into the news part has been new for us. It's been an adventure for sure, but I mean, what more can you say? I mean, we do the best we can with the information given to us. And I think that's one thing that's different from us compared to the national media that you alluded to, is we're not bait clicking.
No,
we're not putting stories out there just to get hits on any social media page or our own website. That's one thing that our owner, Jim Sigelski, has instilled in each of us, is that we print facts. And if Jack's covering a murder, attempted murder from the city of Laurel, whatever the officers or the chief of police tell Jack, those are facts. And we don't speculate when we write the stories. We tell the story as the facts tell it.
Yeah, we won't write it if we have to speculate, and that's one of the things I like. And of course, Jim is no stranger to this audience because Jim guest host when Chris can't be here, usually more times than not. It's just today I wanted to do something a little different, And you've been fortunate, Guru, because you started off here, so you've always kind of had a more conservative boss in Jim than or Kevin, who had to venture out into Blue Land.
Had to learn the hard way.
Yeah, I didn't realize how conservative I was. I always identified more libertarian, and I still do, but I didn't realize how much more conservative until I went over there. And I think one of the craziest things was on the second assassination attempt on Trump at the golf course, the one that was foiled. I walked in and I was like, man, that's big news. They were like, what does it matter? I'm like, what do you mean, what does it matter? That's a huge deal.
They tried to shoot a former president.
Yeah, that's a huge deal. They tried, former president and one that was running for president. So.
Yeah, even if he wasn't running, you're talking about a former president of the United States that already had one assassination attempt just a couple of weeks before. This was the second, so it's obviously big news, and they just kind of blow it. Were they disappointed, Kevin, that he wasn't hit?
I don't think they were disappointed. I'm not going to say that. I don't want to say that. But it was just I don't think that.
Well, if it had been Obama or if it had been Bill Clinton or someone like that, would that have been news to him?
I think that would have been bigger. I really do. I think that would have been bigger.
And then that proves the point of the blue society that you were in over there.
Right. And unfortunately, that's the majority of the mainstream media. They're all, for the most part, very left-leaning. They're not giving you an honest answer when it comes to the news. I mean, if you just look at some of the headlines today and you see this whole Russiagate that's going on that might even go as far back to implicate Barack Obama, if you go to Fox News, you'll see reports on it. If you go others, it's kind of glossed over. It's just give us facts. And the media wasn't always this way. There was a time where they actually reported the news, and they've turned more into a slant. They've turned more into this, propaganda machine. And to me, that's scary because, again, one of the things I don't trust, and I've said it many a time, I don't trust our government. I don't trust a government to grow to the point where they're controlling the media, where they're controlling the narrative. I don't care if it's Barack Obama. I don't care if it's Donald Trump. I don't want government controlling the media apparatus as a whole. And that's kind of what we've seen under Democrat leadership because they are just a propaganda arm for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. It's like whatever their main agenda is, that's what they're pushing. It's not for the betterment of our country. It's not for the betterment of anybody in this room, anybody in this county, anybody in this state. It's whatever helps them and their political career with their political agenda is what they're going to push for because, at the end of the day, it's all about the almighty dollar.
Kevin, you want to expand at something?
I just think the thing that opened my eyes, and I think I've told you guys this before, was during the Democratic debates, and you had, I believe it was Hillary Clinton and Tulsi Gabbard and several others were on the debate table, and Hillary Clinton called Tulsi Gabbard a former soldier, a former veteran I should say, called her a Russian spy. And I just think back 20 years ago, 15 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago from that time, that would have been headlines. Hillary Clinton would have been quote unquote canceled.
Yeah.
And she was not. Like, it was just glossed over. And, I think back of whenever I was 14 or 15 years old, how patriotic we were. But I think about that, and then seeing that, and seeing how having Hillary Clinton say that to someone like Tulsi Gabbard, who, like I said, she's fought and served for this country. Whether you are Republican or Democrat, you do deserve respect for doing that. And for Hillary Clinton to say something like that and it to be just glossed over, really, really disappointed me.
And at the time, they were in the same party because Tulsi
Right.
Gabbard was a Democrat at
Right.
that time.
Yeah.
You know, here's another. I guess this will be an easy one and kind of a softball question. You know, in this age of Trump, you know, you see more and more of this council culture ideal that is propped up, and it's starting to become prominent on both sides. And it seems like people aren't doing any research because you get these pop-ups on social media, and you don't know if it's actual news or not. You know, I mean, Kevin, what could you advise a viewer that, you know, sees those type of pop-ups on social media, and what can they do to make sure before they click that share button, they know they're sharing an honest article?
Investigate it. Simply put, investigate it. Everyone is a blogger now. Everyone's a podcaster. Everyone's a media outlet. You think just because you have a blue check mark that you can be trustworthy, and that's just simply not the case. You know, obviously I know that there's a huge distrust with national media, but I do think that it starts at home, your local media. And despite my time in Macomb, that local media reporting on local things, at least from my point of view, whenever I was there, I presented facts. And I think that's the thing that you have to find out. And also, just investigate it. Source it, find out what's true, find out what's not before you go sharing it. I think the use of AI and things like that have really, really hindered us. And I also think that there's also that deal of being able to just Google anything real quick and saying that it's the gospel is kind of made us lazy a little bit. You know, I think all three of us, we try not to have or post any lazy journalism.
Some of us don't post at all.
Right. Some of us don't post at all, but I think that that's the one thing that separates, especially local journalists and quality local journalists, is they investigate their reporting, they back it up with facts, and you know that's what you have to do. And you can tell a reader who is educated, even if they disagree with you, you can at least tell an educated reader over one who is not and just read a headline.
And I would expound it just a little bit more as far as talking about social media and the different platforms. If you want to, you know, have a real awakening, pause all your accounts for a week, for a month. See how long you can go. I haven't had Facebook in over 5 years. The only account I have is Twitter, and it'd be X.
Formerly known as Twitter.
Formerly known as Twitter. I think we can quit referring to it as that.
No, I think it's still
they
legally
do.
binding.
But, and the main reason I even have X is, to be totally honest, I research or look up things, first of all, involving LSU, and then just sports stuff. And I mean, being off of social media is really a blessing. I know for our business, there's times for the newspaper that we have to have it because there's so many people out there that's where they get their news. Mm-hmm. Well, if it says something that came from the Laurel Leader Call, unless it's an opinionated column, if it's a news story, it's based on facts that were given to us by local police, local sheriff's department, you know, firefighters, the local city council, board of supervisors. I mean, it's like Kevin said, we report the facts and that's it.
We had an incident. I can do this. This is not really political, but we had an incident with Jamal Roberts, where he went on a 30-minute Facebook rant about the key to the city. The whole deal with, was he going to come to Laurel or not for August the 2nd performance? And I wrote a pretty large article on it. Went and found both sides of what I could find, got a statement from the mayor, all of that stuff, and put it together. And I had someone, I was walking through the grocery store, and they recognized me, and they said, "Why are you writing this about Jamal Roberts? He didn't say that." And I had downloaded the video, and then I had timestamps of everything that I quoted. And I said, "Yeah, he said this at this minute mark. And they're like, how do you know that? I said, because I timestamped it, because I'm not just pulling it out of thin air. And, you put context around it, but then you have like a Yahoo, for instance, who just picks it up and Laurel's just a racist city. Well, that's not the entire story.
Yeah, and for our listeners or viewers that don't know, Jamal Roberts is a Mississippian that competed on, was it American Idol?
American Idol.
So he competed on that, was offered the key to the city in Laurel, turned it down, and had that rant that Kevin was talking about. I guess, and we'll go back to you, Kevin, on this one, because our paper is a locally owned paper. Jim Cegelski, our friend, our boss, our owner, owns it himself. How much bigger is it to have a locally owned paper? Because you've got other papers throughout this state that aren't locally owned. They're owned by some corporation based outside of your state, outside of your city, and they're just giving cliff notes to the AP reporting. How much better is it to have a locally owned newspaper like we have here?
It's absolutely huge. I mean, you have our paper, which is locally owned. The paper that I worked for prior to going to Macomb was locally owned. It is absolutely huge. You can go on newspaper archives right now, and any Gannett-owned paper, their front pages, whether it's in Orlando, whether it's probably in Jackson, Houston, Baltimore, they pretty much will all have the same headline.
Yep.
It's a copy and cut and paste headline across the board. And you and I and Guru all know that the things that are happening in Baltimore are probably not happening in Houston.
No.
And it's not happening in Orlando, and it's sure not happening in Jackson. And I think that's one thing, too, where we're in a war of keeping newspapers relevant. And I think that's one thing that's hurting, is because it's cookie cutter, copy and paste. And people are looking at newspapers and saying, well, it's the same thing. Why do I care about this? Whatever's happening here, it makes nothing to me.
And that's what makes us different and sets us apart from all those corporate-owned papers.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, Guru, I know you have worked with, with Sean Murphy, our executive editor, many a times. And one of the things y'all, I think, enjoy doing is coming up with the catchy headlines that, going back to what Kevin was just talking about, you don't get out of those cookie cutters, because you guys have come up with some pretty creative headlines. I think Kevin and I are challenging ourselves to get better at it ourselves, but you guys have come up with some fun winners.
And you can't throw Murph in there without the legend Mark Thornton,
yes,
who retired earlier this year to pursue other interests. When the three of us were here in the office, and including Jim himself, it was basically for each issue. It's kind of a contest, kind of like how it's become now, and it's fun because some people get it, some people don't, and the ones who don't, they really never will. But it's put there to grab your attention. And yes, it's done intentionally for that fact. Because I know for a fact that when I wasn't at the paper, if I was going into one of the local grocery stores and there's a Leader Call newspaper rack out there, and I glanced down that headline. Oh, that's interesting. Let me throw 75 cents in here because I just want to find out what they're talking about. And that's the reason why we do it. It's not a gimmick. We're in the business of selling newspapers, and that's one of the top ways, especially when you have, 100 different places throughout Jones and neighboring counties that carry our newspaper on Wednesdays and Saturdays every week. That's one of the best ways to draw not only readers in general in, but maybe somebody that hasn't picked a Leader Call up maybe ever, or it's been a long time, but a headline catches them like it did me in the 7 years I was gone. And we do it for fun, but we also do it to, help somebody that might not normally read the paper be drawn in and give up 75 cents to see what we're talking about with that headline.
Maybe even pick up a future subscriber in the process if they like more of the content.
I'm sure that's happened more times than we know.
It's been fascinating, especially me getting back in, because even in the days before when I was in newspapers, I was always just stringer. This is my first time kind of as a full-time job outside of when I was an intern under Murph and Mark years ago. And I'm glad you brought up Mark, because he actually came up with one of the headlines for one of the episodes Jim and I did of Chris McDaniel's America. So I'm glad you made sure that we didn't forget about Mark.
Can't forget about the legend.
No.
The legend.
Although he hates when you refer to him as that.
I mean, it's a fact. Whether you like it or not, Mark, you're the legend.
Again, when it comes to politics and how polarizing it can be, is when you're in a profession like this and Kevin, this is probably more geared towards you, since, Josh was in sports until recently and worked for Jim, so he was probably okay with his political opinion. How much did you feel like maybe you had to keep some of your political views to yourself? You
definitely do. One thing I did, and I'm still this way, I'm not confrontational. So, you just try to kind of, for me, being out in the wilderness and Macomb, I just kind of did my own thing, right? And even now, I do try to not be confrontational, because you can often tell who's going to just react instead of having a debate or having a conversation, I guess, at the point of it.
Wasn't that the old saying that's one of the two things you don't bring up in casual conversation is politics and religion?
I mean, you find that out, quickly when you're sitting at a hibachi grill in Memphis, Tennessee. Jim will get that. But, you don't bring up politics. Things can happen. But no, I think too, I like reading people and getting a feel of where they're at. And there's some people that I would try to press a little bit, and some people I still do. I try to press a little bit, but for the most part, I don't. And two, the same way, even whenever I'm writing a story, covering elections, I've covered several elections now, locally, statewide. I don't want my opinion getting in the way of the story.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'll never forget is back a couple of years ago, whenever I was in Jasper County, we had tornadoes come through Lewin, and Governor Tate Reeves came through, and I was not worried about anything that they were going through, any scandals or anything like that. I wanted to know the facts of, is Mississippi and Lewin, Mississippi going to get help from the state of Mississippi?
Yeah.
And I'll never forget sitting there, and there's tons of other media there, a lot of them TV media, and they just jump into whatever scandal was going on. I think he was at a fundraiser whenever the Lewin tornadoes hit, and they immediately jump into that. And I'm thinking to myself, why should he? One of the big things was why wasn't he there the day after it happened? And my whole thought process was, why are you worried if he was there? The governor doesn't need to be there after a major storm in the way, whenever people are trying to, salvage pictures and salvage clothing and all this, when they need help. There's not really much he can do. And I'll just never forget how they just kind of jumped on that and leaned into the scandal whenever the situation was that people needed help.
Well, the reality, too, if he had been there the next day, they would have criticized him for showing up too quick so he could get the photo op. Exactly. So it's a lose-lose situation in many ways. And while we're on that subject, I can't stand politicians that rush to a storm to get their picture taken, because they're not doing anything to help. They're there to be seen. And I find that extremely phony. Now, governors, it's expected of a governor, so I'm not necessarily saying... But the ones I'm talking about, the local politicians, the state politicians, who have no business. They're showing up. I heard a story years ago of a politician that used to keep a pair of overalls and boots in his trunk. So that way you never know when there might be a good situation to throw that on and get that photo op. They weren't going there to actually cut up any limbs. They were going there to get that picture taken, holding that chainsaw, pretending they were helping folks.
They keep a red dress in the trunk, too?
Did they what?
Did they keep a red dress in the trunk, too?
They might have. I don't think it... I think we might be talking about two different. But,
I might have got my hairs crossed.
Well, I know the day after the Lewin tornado came through, that I was immediately called by one of our officials, and they were very eager for me to follow that official around, and I think that official may be running for governor soon. We just don't really know. So.
Fun.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I want to have you guys back on when you can give a full hour. I know you guys got to take off, and I'm going to wrap up the last 30 minutes by myself. But thank y'all for coming on. There's so many more topics we can talk about, and here in the near future, we will be starting a video show as part of the Leader Call. So this kind of was a tease of what you can expect there.
Absolutely. I totally enjoyed it. I look forward to doing it again with you, Jack.
Absolutely.
Same here. Ready to get our podcast and get the LLC media, I guess is what we call it, off and running.
Absolutely, guys. Well, we're going to pause right here for a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about some of the news of the day.
Resort.
All right, guys, welcome back to Chris McDaniel's America. Again, I'm Jack Fairchild. My guest had to take off. You know, we've got some obligations that they have to get to early. They're actually going there ahead of me so that way they can cover for me because they want to get there, you know, get everything set up and get things going. So they're going to cover for me till I get there because I'm committed to finishing this show for you guys this week and keeping us at an hour-long show. And it's a lot of fun. It was great to have those guys in and talk to them for just a moment about the ins and outs of working for a newspaper and what it feels like to be a conservative in a field of liberals. I can tell you my personal story of that before I get into any news on that, because even though I haven't experienced it in my time at Leader Call, when I was a student at the University of Southern Miss and writing for the student paper there, I did experience some folks because I was an unapologetic conservative. I even had a college Republican bumper sticker, and several of my classmates, colleagues, would say a thing or two about, you know, well, why are you a Republican? How can you do this? And they all took it as a part of their mission to convince me I was wrong and I needed to join their side of the equation. Obviously, it worked out well because, you know, here I am hosting a conservative show. So, yeah, none of their words stuck with me, and it never will because I'm based in my convictions. I'm based in my faith. I understand that there are those out there that disagree with us, and that's okay. The difference, I think, on way how I see things, I'm willing to sit down and talk to you about it. I'm willing to go down and have the conversation. A lot of them are not. They just want to look down on us. They just want to try to spit out an absurdity about why we're not in agreement with them, why we're wrong. And in some cases, it might be an issue where nobody's wrong. In many cases, it's an issue where they're wrong, but they're just not willing to see it. Maybe it's emotion has clouded them because a lot of liberalism is based purely in emotion. It's not based in logic and reason. They hear something like, oh, well, if we can do this and give more money to these needy folks, then it'll be great. But by doing that, they're first giving that money to government and then trusting that government's going to funnel it to the right place. Government's never going to be the answer to fixing problems. Government creates more problems than it ever solves. That's one of the major problems that we face. And we're currently watching this whole thing that is unfolding before our eyes, where, again, it's crazy what we're watching. The Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, has come out about this Obama having a role, President Barack Obama having a role in pushing the Trump-Russia collusion narrative during the presidential race in 2016. And we're watching to see what might happen, if anything. I think they nickname it Russiagate. It was one of the nicknames that was given. And we're sitting back watching to see what's going to happen. Is anything going to happen? Are there going to be charges pressed? Are there going to be... My prediction is we'll see hearings and nothing will happen, because that seems to be the mainstay whenever we get something like this. Oh, let's have a hearing about it. And they'll have a hearing, and you'll watch all these testimonies, and you'll believe that your senator or your congressman is doing something about it. But no, they just want you to see that they're having hearings. Why do you think they're all televised? They're not going to really do anything about it. And I'm not alone in my assessment that there's not going to be any true charges. Former federal prosecutor Andy McCarthy suggested that President Barack Obama is complicit up to his neck in the infamous Russiagate scandal brought forth by Tulsi Gabbard last week. But Republicans anticipating a prosecution shouldn't hold their breath. He said the scandal here is they had a legitimate reason to investigate Russia's meddling in the election. And what they did was they used that as a pretext to basically investigate Trump, to spy on his presidency, and to try to make him an ineffective president. That's why it's a terrible political dirty trip. This issue, again, is it prosecutable? And he says he just doesn't see it. McCarthy is a Fox News contributor who formerly served as an assistant United States attorney for the Southern District of New York, pointing to Trump's prior insistence that presidents have complete immunity from prosecution for their actions executed while in office. And because that got hurt, now Obama might get that same protection. He also noted that Obama's alleged wrongdoings took place 9 years ago beyond the statute of limitations for federal crimes, which is generally 5 years. So again, we're going to get all hyped up. We're going to get all excited. And people are going to start, you're going to start to see folks sharing, Barack Obama's about to get prosecuted. They're going to get Barack Obama for treason. It's not going to happen, people. It's not going to happen. And I hate to break it to you. No matter how big the smoking gun is, no matter how overwhelming the evidence is, Gabbard, declassified a blitz of documents that she claims provide overwhelming evidence implicating that Barack Obama and members of the intelligence community were involved in a years-long coup, as she referred to it, to undermine President Donald Trump following his victory over Hillary Clinton. So again, we're going to get excited. We're going to start to talk about, we're going to prosecute. We're going to get Barack Obama on treason. It's just not going to happen. And it's easy for me to say that because we've seen evidences of this before. We've seen other examples to where, Hillary Clinton in the email server. Nothing came from that. Still not been prosecuted for it. Not going to be prosecuted for it. I understand that a lot of you will see that, and some of you are probably getting mad at me for bursting the bubble in the first place and just telling you the truth. But I know, again, we were talking a second ago before the guys left about social media and sharing stuff that you haven't researched, you haven't looked into, you haven't studied and made sure that it's accurate. And you see a lot of folks now that they're not necessarily sharing a story. They may be sharing this particular story, but they're sharing that narrative that Barack Obama's about to go to jail. And he's not. The worst thing that you're going to uncover, if this case is as bad as it says, is how dirty rotten our government is and how we can't trust it. Because again, if this is true, if these documents contain what she says they do, and the evidence is there that a sitting president of the United States worked against a candidate and then worked behind the scenes against the then newly elected president of the United States. It's crazy. It is a true betrayal to our entire country. And quite frankly, yeah, if it's true, he should be prosecuted. But they're not going to do it. For one, they're scared of the political optics, I'm sure. Not Trump. I'm not saying Trump's scared of the political optics. But I'm saying the Republicans are. And that's why they'll just hold hearings. They'll let enough time pass while they do these little hearings, and you'll sit back and soak them up, and you'll see this, and you'll be questioning why isn't more being done. Well, why it's not more not being done, it's part of the political theater. It's a distraction to get you away from that. Look, I'm still not over the fact that we hadn't seen the Epstein list released, which is one of the things we were promised. Now we're being told it didn't even exist, even though we know that it did, because we've been told it did by the same people who are now telling us it doesn't exist. Maybe some of this is a distraction to try to get the folks that are upset away from that. I don't know. Makes sense, but at the same time, that's speculating. One thing that is clear is we'll read these files and we'll look into it. And then when we don't see anything done about them, we're going to get upset. But are we going to get upset at the right people? We're going to sit here and watch the Republicans hold hearings in which they'll send out mailers and flyers when they run for re-election to try to convince you why you should vote for them again. And you'll probably fall for it, because that's the reality. It's crazy. Switching gears, of course, I think last episode we mentioned the fact that Stephen Colbert and his Late Show has been canceled. Well, it's going to be canceled. It's been announced that it's canceled. They're giving the guy a whole nother year before he's off the air. This morning, I released a new episode of the Right Side Radio Show, and in it, I talked about how the left is trying to make Stephen Colbert into a martyr. They're trying to paint him as this victim, a person that CBS is denying his First Amendment rights. And the question I posed then, and I'll pose right now on this show, is, so he's canceled in May of 2026, which means his show's going on for almost a whole nother year. So you tell me, how is that suppressing his voice? How is that taking away his First Amendment right? The truth is, the guy lost almost $40 million for CBS last year. That's why he's being canceled. His show wasn't profitable. It was losing them money. So why would you expect them to keep him on? It's crazy that that's where they're going. And of course, you've got folks that are jumping on that bandwagon. Every other late night show host jumped on it. It's the cackling hens from The View, I'm sure, are jumping on it. The reality is, if our government, if Donald Trump himself was behind getting programming canceled, I would be against that. But this was a decision made by the network. And let's talk for a second about why Stephen Colbert was losing money, losing ratings, because people don't turn into late night television to be lectured to. They don't turn in late night television to see a liberal senator sitting there as a guest. They don't necessarily turn on late night television to see a conservative senator as the guest. Maybe every now and then you can get away with it, but Colbert regularly had left-leaning politicians on his show. Every show was very political in its nature. And the American people started tuning it out, especially after Trump won re-election, because that was a guy that won overwhelmingly. The left can't accept the fact that Colbert was rejected. So they have to create this false narrative that he's a victim, a guy that they are denying his First Amendment rights. That's not what's happened at all. Stephen Colbert will be on another network, probably MSNBC. I still dream of watching him and Keith Olbermann host a show together where they just scream back and forth, I'm the most liberal. No, I'm the most liberal. Would love to see that train wreck. I'd only watch it once because their views would probably drive me crazy. But my point is, the man, even though I don't like him, is a talented individual and somebody that has an audience more skewed towards who he wants to go after will jump on the chance to get him. CBS saw the losses, saw how much of a liability he was, and decided he wasn't worth it any longer, and they moved on. They didn't tell him, hey, look, when you leave, once we cancel you, you're not allowed to talk anymore. None of that happened. So this whole idea that Stephen Colbert is having his voice silenced is absurd. It's ridiculous. But that's the narrative they're putting out there, and we'll just have to continue to watch and see more how things play out in the near future. Because again, it's a very interesting to watch their reaction. I mean, whether it's Hollywood actors or all his other late night hosts. You know, I thought all those late night hosts, I thought they were in competition with one another. I thought they were all fighting over so shouldn't they be happy that a guy they were in competition is gone? But instead, they're all trying to sing the same narrative. Because at this instance, it's not about their individual ratings. It's about spreading the leftist message. That's why they're upset that Stephen Colbert got canceled. They stopped worrying about ratings a long time ago. As individuals, they were more worried about making sure they put out that leftist message. That's why you're seeing that reaction the way that you're seeing it. If you want to hear more on that, go ahead and listen to this morning's episode of the Right Side Radio Show. I go way more in depth into that. More news, folks. A House Oversight Panel subcommittee voted to subpoena Bill and Hillary Clinton for alleged links to convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein and his accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell. The motion for subpoenas was issued by Representative Scott Perry during a federal law enforcement subcommittee hearing on Wednesday. No roll call was taken, and the subpoena was approved by a Republican-led panel via a voice vote. So part of this happened because they were challenged on this whole Epstein list deal. So now they are subpoenaing the Clintons to see what they can get out of them. And it goes back to what I was talking about just a moment ago on Rushgate. It's political theater, folks. Don't expect to get anything out of this. I would love for it to lead to something, but the truth of the matter is, and we've talked about this before, and when Chris gets back, I'm sure we'll talk about it more in depth. The truth of the whole matter on the Epstein list, the reason why we hadn't seen anything, the reason why we probably won't see anything, is because the Epstein list has names on both sides of the aisle. That's the truth. You may not want to admit it, but there are Republicans on that list and there are Democrats on that list. I'm not saying Donald Trump's on the list. I'm just saying that if he's got friends that were. He's got people within the Republican Party that were. And Democrats, I'm not saying Bill and Hillary are on the list, although I think Bill was, but that's purely speculation. But I'm not saying they're on it. But they definitely had friends who were on it. And all these senators and all these congressmen, they have friends on it. They might have colleagues on it. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure they got colleagues on it. Even if their name is not specifically there. They know people. They serve with people. They have served with people on it. This is a case, and the reason why so many of us are still screaming about this list, the reason why so many of us still want to see it released, is because we understand that this whole deal is a protection of the power class. And it's sickening. If they did these crimes, if they committed these crimes to minors, if they committed these crimes to these women, they should be prosecuted. Plain and simple. I don't care who it is. I don't care if they're on the right or on the left. If they committed these crimes, I want to see them prosecuted. But what we have now is political gamemanship. And why I'm happy to see Bill and Hillary get brought in and asked for questions. I don't think that anything will come of it. I don't think we'll see anything truly happen as a result of it. It's political theater. Political theater is a game that they play far too often on us. They hold that hearing. One of the worst things that has happened in American politics is the invention of C-SPAN. When that network came on, and every elected senator, every elected congressman knew that they could perform in front of a camera, it stopped being about representing us. And it became about them putting forth a performance. They realized they could become a star by sitting in that room. Sitting up there and having that camera in front of them while these trials, these hearings are going on. They're not trials, they're hearings. While these hearings are going on, they could sit there and they could ask the smart question. They could be seen as tough and pressing the individual on these topics. They knew that this could probably ensure that they got reelected. They understood that. That's why they pushed for it. That's why they moved things in that direction. But the honest thing is, they also knew that it's just grandstanding. They also knew that they really didn't have to do anything more but put on a show for you people. And then you'd vote for them because you saw them fighting for them. And the truth is, it was a performance. We've got a few fighters in D.C., but they're growing fewer and fewer. We're seeing less and less. I think of Rand Paul. I think of Mike Lee. Sometimes Ted Cruz. But we've got a few fighters, but they're few and far between, for sure. We need more. We need more. But the fact that so many of them have learned the parlor trick of getting in front of a camera during one of these hearings and tricking you guys into believing that that somehow shows that they're a staunch conservative. They're fighting for you. It makes you ignore going and looking at their voting records. It makes you not pay attention to the things that they put forth. It's that simple. It's that simple. So again, people, it comes back to thing. I'm going to go back to something Kevin said when I was asking him about all these fake links that go around that people just share without ever. You have to research everything. You can't trust anything. You can't even trust your eyes anymore. In the age of artificial intelligence, you can't even trust your eyes. You have to research it. Don't fall for political theater. Don't fall for the trap of them holding a hearing while they're sitting there voting against your principles time and time again. These type of situations, these going back and trying to make it look like you might do something about Barack Obama this far past, is nothing more than political theater. If he did this and was involved, yes, I do believe he should be prosecuted. But you know where he's not going to be prosecuted? On the Senate floor. has to happen in a courtroom. And that's not going to happen, people. You heard me tell you why. It's disgusting if we find out from these declassified documents that he did this, especially as President of the United States. And it doesn't matter that he's a Democrat. It doesn't matter that he's a liberal, because I'd say the same thing if it was on the other side of the equation. I'd say the same thing if it was a Republican president that had done this. I'd say the same thing, because again, we don't need to see the elected officials influencing the process. Look, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not the biggest fan of elected officials issuing endorsements in the first place when it comes to our elections, because quite frankly, they're going to skew more towards their colleague or this or that. So I prefer them to stay out of that stuff altogether. Now, don't get me wrong, what Barack Obama is being accused of doing is far worse than just endorsing someone. Again, our nation has so many problems at the moment. So many problems. We have to make sure that we understand what's important and what we can and can't fix. Prioritize those problems. Prioritize the issues like the national deficit that we're about to drive off of a financial cliff, and nobody wants to talk about that because it doesn't generate the clicks or the views. We've got to prioritize the important issues. If we don't, we're going to run right off this cliff. This nation, despite the fact that it feels old to you, it's still a baby in the grand scheme of nations. And if we want to continue to see it be prosperous, we have to start doing our own stuff as citizens. We have to figure out how to prioritize the issues that matter. Till we do that, we're going to continue to have problems. Guys, this has been Chris McDaniel's America here on the Midnight Ride Network, your home for the anti-establishment movement. I'm Jack Fairchilds, filling in for Chris McDaniel. I want to thank my guests from the first 30 minutes in Kevan Lindsey and Josh Guru Nichols. Thank them so much for coming on and being a part of this. We'll see you guys again next week.
Looks like you've been sleeping well.
Megan, he's back. The My Pillow guy.
And you're looking good.
Still feeling good.
Well, just when you thought it couldn't get any better, we've got the best pillow ever, My Pillow 2.0.
Wow, it's so soft and smooth.
It's cool to the touch. How did you do that?
Well, we took My Pillow's patented fill and combined it with this new technology that we didn't have back then when I invented My Pillow to bring you the best pillow in history, My Pillow 2.0. Just like all of you, I never imagined that My Pillow could get any better. That's why I haven't changed it in nearly 20 years. Then I heard about a revolutionary new technology, and I knew I had to bring it to you all. My Pillow 2.0 is truly the next generation of My Pillow.
The My Pillow 2.0 is cooler and softer than the last My Pillow. It is so comfortable to sleep on at night. I look forward to going to bed, and I wake up well rested in the morning.
Sleep is all about temperature and height. My Pillow 2.0's patented adjustable fill is going to give you the exact individual support you need from your head to your bed. And now here's where it gets even better. We've all experienced those temperature-related sleep interruptions where you get too hot, you toss and turn, you flip your pillow over to the cool side. Well, all that's gone with my brand new My Pillow 2.0 cooling fabric that's made with temperature-regulating thread.
The best sleep just got even better. Whether you have a MyPillow or not, you need to get the brand new MyPillow 2.0. Call or go to MyPillow.com now. Use your promo code, and for a limited time when you buy one, you'll get a second one absolutely free.
You're sleeping even better.
And cooler, too.
And you're looking good.
Feeling good.
I knew you would.
Visit mypillow.com.